Welcome to Attica Armory. While we generally try to steer clear of doing opinionated, controversial comparison topics on calibers, we felt that the hardy 41 Magnum deserved its day in court. The following presentation may not be for the faint of heart, especially if you love the 10mm auto like we do, but live with the assumption that it gives you 41 Magnum power in a semi-auto. Being that we are long-time, die-hard fans of the 10mm auto cartridge, we have always been curious where the 10mm equals 41 Magnum notion originated. Having heard the comparison thrown around for years by all sorts of folks, from average Joes on internet comment sections, to gun shop staff, to the most highly respected gun writers and industry experts out there. While our steamy bromance with the 10mm auto has flourished over the years, we do like to keep it real with our expectations. That said, we have yet to find any data to support the 10mm equals 41 Magnum comparison. On the contrary, when comparing the two, they were not even close, unless of course you compared the most powerful 10mm load to the weakest powder puff starting load in 41 Magnum, which is a far cry from a real-world comparison. Let's start by taking a look at the load data for accurate number 9 pistol powder, as the 200 grain XTP over 12.5 grain of number 9 has been our go-to 10mm defensive load for about a decade now. Not surprisingly, number 9 is also a fantastic powder for rolling your own 41 mags. The published velocity of this load is 1170 feet per second and 608 foot-pounds of energy from a 5-inch barrel. However, out of a 4.6-inch Glock 20 barrel, real-world velocities of this load are around 1120 feet per second and 557 foot-pounds at the muzzle. Conversely, a 200 grain bullet over 16.9 grain of number 9 in 41 Magnum has a published velocity of 1503 feet per second and 1003 foot-pounds from a 10-inch test barrel. This yields a real-world velocity closer to 1350 feet per second and 809 foot-pounds of energy in a 5-inch revolver. If comparing 5-inch barrel velocities, this constitutes a 15% increase in velocity and a 33% increase in muzzle energy. Now, you might be saying, how about hot rod 10mm loads from companies like Double Tap or Buffalo Bore? Those will put me in 41 mag territory. Well, not exactly. You see, everything is relative. The 41 mag can also be hot rodded to attain ludicrous speed velocities. And when comparing hot rod loads side by side, the disparity between the two cartridges becomes even wider. Let's take a look at Buffalo Bore's awe-inspiring heavy outdoorsman line as an example. The 220 grain cast lead 10mm load produces an impressive 1140 feet per second out of a 4.6-inch Glock 20 barrel. That is 635 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. Very nice to say the least. However, the Buffalo Bore 230 grain cast lead 41 mag load produces a massive 1370 feet per second out of just a 4-inch revolver, or a 20% increase in velocity with a 10 grain increase in mass. That equates to a whopping 959 foot-pounds of energy, or a 51% increase over the comparable 10mm load. Based on this hot rod comparison, a 308 Winchester is ballistically closer to a 300 Weatherby Magnum, the granddaddy of 30 caliber magnums, than the 10mm is to the 41 mag. When looking at standard 180 grain 308 Winchester and 300 Weatherby Magnum loads, we find a roughly 1,096 foot-pounds or 38% difference in muzzle energy. In other words, it becomes a big stretch of the imagination to say the two are producing similar results. Yet somehow the 10mm auto is assumed to be on par with the 41 Magnum despite a potential 51% increase in power from the 41. A more accurate comparison would be to par the 10mm auto to a full house 357 Magnum in a 5 to 6-inch barrel. As you can see, the 357 Magnum produces ballistics that more closely compare to the 10mm auto. Having said that, 10mm fans should not feel down and blue. The 357 mag is arguably one of the best man-stoppers in the handgun world, and with the right load, it makes a very capable backwoods defense cartridge. Having 15+1 rounds of 357 Magnum power in a semi-auto G20 is nothing to feel shortchanged about. Using the aforementioned accurate number 9 load data, we can see that the 180 grain XTP over 12 grain of number 9 in 357 Magnum produces a respectable 1,202 feet per second, or 578 foot-pounds of energy from a 6-inch barrel. A similar 180 grain XTP load with 13.5 grain of number 9 in 10mm auto produces 1,242 feet per second from a 5-inch barrel and 617 foot-pounds of energy. This is only a 3% difference in velocity and roughly 7% difference in muzzle energy. Unlike the 10mm to 41 mag comparison, these results are close enough to be considered truly negligible. Again, if we compare the hot rod loads from each caliber, we see that the 357 Magnum can also be rodded pretty hot, causing another disparity with the 10mm to develop. The 180 grain 357 Magnum Buffalo Bore outdoorsman load produces 1,398 feet per second from a 5-inch revolver, or 781 foot-pounds of energy. The similar 220 grain 10mm outdoorsman load pushes 1,140 feet per second out of a 4.6-inch Glock 20 barrel, for a solid 635 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. In this scenario, the 357 Magnum displays a 22% increase in muzzle energy, but also has a 40 grain decrease in bullet mass as well as increased sectional density. While significant in terms of increased energy, the drop in bullet mass means they are still in the same ballpark when it comes to actual terminal ballistic performance. So what is the conclusion here? While we only covered a small portion of the available load data for these cartridges, it gives us a glimpse into what is quite apparent across the ballistic spectrum, that the 10mm auto is not equal to the 41 Magnum. Perhaps the old saying, a lie repeated often enough becomes accepted truth, holds firm. Perhaps someone, somewhere, at some time, in some long-lost 1980s marketing pitch, stated that the 10mm auto will put 41 Magnum power into a semi-auto platform. And it was repeated and parroted enough times that it became the truth. Who knows? While not everyone will be disillusioned by the data presented, it certainly ought to make food for thought. Either way, we didn't want our love for the 10mm to blind us into believing it is something it's not. That said, we would love to hear your opinions on this subject. Thanks again for visiting Attica Armory. Have fun and stay safe.